guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a very iconic yet also very affordable wristwatch. And I know this has been reviewed a million times on YouTube, but today's my turn. We are looking at the Seiko SKX. This is the 007 version. After we look at the Seiko though, I sort of stumbled across a vintage watch the other day and picked it up for a really good bargain. So I'll share that with you too, as well as kind of the story of how I found it. So let's spin the camera around and we'll take a closer look at the Seiko. Alright, so let's just start this off by giving you guys a quick wristwatch check. Today I am wearing the Seiko Turtle reissue. Absolutely love this watch. I do have it on for a reason though. I'm going to be using it for a comparison tool for a part of the review. We'll get to that here in a second. First of all, the specs. We are looking at on this watch a case diameter of 42.5 millimeters. We are looking at lug to lug 46 millimeters, a lug width of 22 millimeters, and a case thickness of 13 millimeters. The water resistance on this watch is 200 meters, and the crystal is Seiko's Hardlex crystal. The dial of this watch is a matte black, with the only writing being at the 12 o'clock position, Seiko automatic, and at 6 o'clock in orange, divers 200 meter. At 3 o'clock we have the date window, and the lume on this, by the way, a lot of people already know, is very heavily applied. I'll put a picture up now. As you can see, it's loomed at the hour markers as well as the hands, and the pip at the 60-minute mark on the bezel. Now, as far as the hands go on this watch, this is the same handset that is on the Seiko Turtle reissue, and I really love their design, but one of my favorite parts is the counterbalance on the second hand. It's painted black, so the little bit of lume on the counterbalance almost appears to float around the dial, and I just love the look of that. One complaint you hear often when it comes to this watch is alignment of the chapter ring as well as the bezel. I got a little lucky on the chapter ring in this one. It's not too bad. The bezel is about a half a click off to the left or right at the 12 when I want it at the 12 o'clock position. Also, this bezel, which has an aluminum insert, it has kind of a tinny, cheap feel to it, I find. And if I compare it to the Seiko Turtle, I find this one just feels a little bit more refined and sounds a little bit more refined as well. So let me just pull the strap off of this watch and we will take a look at the case. So the case is 100% stainless steel. It is brushed on the top portion of the case. On the sides and the bottom side of the case, we have a nice polish. Now, before I flip this over to take a look at the case back, I just want to point out the crown. The crown, although being very large, which usually means they're quite easy to operate, this one's a little tricky. The crown guards come out just a little bit too far. With that being said, though, I love the look, so it's kind of an even trade-off in my opinion. So if we flip this over, you're going to see the famous Seiko Tsunami Wave stamped on the screw-down case back, which is housing the Seiko 7S26 movement. This is non-hacking and non-hand-winding movement. Would have been nice if it were, but this is famous for being a workhorse movement, and there's a lot of stories actually out there where people have had them for 20, 25, 30 years without having to have them serviced, which is really nice. Now, before I try this on for you guys, I just have to touch on the bracelet when it comes to this watch, and it is not an exaggeration when I say this is the worst bracelet I have ever handled. It is very tinny. The end links are hollow and the metal is so thin. I'm sure I could just crush it between my fingers. The clasp is horrible. It's very thin, kind of sharp metal, and it's tinny as well. But I did know that coming in, so I didn't have any high expectations for the bracelet. I knew I'd be taking it off and putting it right away on a NATO. I'll probably order a rubber strap for this at some point here too. So let's try it on quick and you guys can see it on wrist. Okay, so there is no doubt a few cons to this watch. again, I'd watched a million videos about this, so I kind of knew going in. And I think the way I look at this watch, I could totally understand if somebody didn't like it or maybe even hated it. But it's got a certain something about it. It almost reminds me of the Vostok watches, which I've never handled, but it seems like a split community. There are issues with Vostok, but people seem to love them for their almost for their quirkiness. And I think this sort of falls into that same category. I am on the love side of this thing, though. I really enjoy it. I think it looks great, and I can really appreciate it, even with its faults. So that's going to be it for my thoughts on the SKX. Let's take a look at the vintage piece that I picked up the other day. All right, so this is what I found last week, I believe. It is an Omega Geneve. It is a model from 1970, and I know that because when I got it home, I opened it up and did a search on the serial numbers on the case back as well as the movement. It's a caliber 601. I'm going to show you some pictures of it opened up. The movement is quite beautiful. So the story behind how I found this, it was completely by accident. I was out doing a little early Christmas shopping for my father. He likes antique toys and collectibles as well as sports memorabilia. So I went into a few antique stores, and one of the stores had a box full of watches. The entire box was for sale for $150, and I dug through them. A lot of them there was McDonald's ones and different Chinese made watches, but I found this in there, and the guy ended up selling it to me for $20. Now, I didn't know the condition. I didn't know if it was going to keep good time, and I took it home, and I was expecting a bit of a mess when I opened up the case back, but as you could see in the pictures, it looks very clean. This is actually gaining only about 10 seconds per day, and it lasted well over 40 hours on a full wind. I think it's a cool little piece. The only kicker is, for me anyways, it's a 35 millimeter. It's a lot smaller than what I'm used to wearing. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to clean this up. I did purchase a new leather strap for it, and I might wear it for a few days and just see how I feel about it. I'll give you guys an update and let you know if I decide to pass it along. I may even gift it to somebody. Overall, I think it was a really cool find, and I'm happy to own it. That's going to be it, though, for now. Let's spin the camera back around, and we'll wrap this up. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If anybody out there has more experience when it comes to the vintage watches than myself, which is almost zero, if you guys have any suggestions of what I can do to this watch, it is keeping good time, so I'm not sure if I should take it in for a service. The gasket on the back of the watch does look pretty worn, so I'm going to probably replace that at the very least, but any suggestions in the comment section below would be really appreciated. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.